For 7 centuries, gold was the heartbeat of civilization, the anchor of trust, the foundation of power. From empires to merchants, it shaped destiny itself. But in just over a century, that golden order was torn apart, replaced by something invisible. The story begins in medieval Europe, where kings waged wars not for land, but for the metal that gleamed beneath their crowns. Gold was more than wealth, it was authority. To control gold was to command the world's future. In Florence, 1252, the florin was born, the first widely accepted gold coin of the modern age. It became Europe's heartbeat, trusted from Venice to London. For the first time, money meant something tangible. Soon, empires followed, France with the écu, England with the noble, and Spain with its golden real. The world was bound by a shared faith, that every coin had a soul of metal to prove its worth. But gold had its price, literally. Wars drained treasuries faster than mines could fill them. When rulers ran out of metal, they turned to something new, something dangerous, paper. China had already tried it centuries earlier, the first paper money under the Song dynasty. It worked until greed took over. Too much paper, too little gold, and faith vanished. Europe would repeat that same mistake. The promise was always the same. Don't worry, this paper can be exchanged for gold. But the vaults never held enough. By the 18th century, banks became the new temples of gold. The Bank of England was founded to lend, print, and promise, all backed by the glimmer of metal in their vaults. Then came 1816, the birth of the modern gold standard. Every British pound could be redeemed for a precise amount of gold. Trust soared. Money had meaning again. By the late 1800s, the gold standard ruled the world. Nations tied their currencies to gold, binding economies together like links in a shining chain. But the chain would snap in 1914. When World War I erupted, nations suspended gold payments to fund their wars. Gold fled the banks, and paper began to rule again. After the war, chaos, inflation devoured Germany's mark. People carried cash in wheelbarrows just to buy bread. The paper promise had failed once more. The United States, however, still had gold, mountains of it. By the 1920s, 2/3 of the world's supply glittered in American vaults. The dollar became the new symbol of strength. Then came 1929, the Great Depression. Confidence shattered. Banks collapsed, and people lined up to demand gold for their paper dollars. It was a run on trust itself. In 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt made a bold move. He outlawed private gold ownership. Americans had to turn in their gold, for paper. The government took control of the nation's treasure. The gold standard was fading, but its ghost lingered. After World War II, the world met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design a new system. There, they crowned the U.S. Dollar King. Every currency would link to the dollar, and the dollar would link to gold at $35 an ounce. It seemed perfect. For decades, it worked. America became the banker of the world. Nations trusted its word, its stability and its gold. But trust has limits. By the 1960s, America was printing more dollars than gold it owned to fund wars, welfare, and dreams. The balance began to crack. France noticed first. President Charles de Gaulle called America's bluff, demanding gold for France's dollars. Shiploads of gold sailed back to Europe. By 1971, the vaults were running dry. President Nixon faced an impossible choice: lose all the gold or break the promise. He chose the latter. That night, the world changed forever. Nixon closed the gold window, cutting the dollar's final link to gold. Money was now backed by nothing but trust. Gold had ruled for 700 years, and in 110, it vanished, replaced by promises, policies, and paper. The dollar became the world's reserve currency. It wasn't just money, it was power. Printed at will, unbound by metal or weight. At first, it seemed like freedom. Without gold, economies could grow endlessly. Governments could spend without limits. The world cheered until prices began to rise. By the 1970s, inflation raged. The dollar's value melted away, just as gold's had once anchored it. People began to wonder, what is money really? And then came 1973. Oil replaced gold as the new anchor. The U.S. made a secret deal with Saudi Arabia: sell oil only in dollars. Thus was born the petrodollar. From that moment, the dollar's power was sealed. Every nation needed it to buy energy, the lifeblood of modern civilization. But history has a cruel memory. Every empire that manipulates money eventually faces its reckoning. Rome did. Britain did. Now the dollar stands at that edge. In 2008, the world trembled again. Banks fell, debts exploded, and the Federal Reserve printed trillions to save the system. That moment proved it. Money could be created from nothing. The gold era was long gone, replaced by faith in screens, digits, and credit. Today, the U.S. national debt exceeds $35 trillion. The dollar still dominates, but cracks are forming. Nations are quietly moving back toward gold. China buys gold. Russia hoards it. Even central banks across the world are quietly filling their vaults again. What do they see coming? They remember what we've forgotten. That paper fades, but metal endures. That trust is fragile when built on promises instead of proof. For 700 years, gold never lied. It couldn't be printed. It couldn't vanish with a click. It was truth, heavy, cold, and eternal. But for 110 years, we've lived in a different world. One where value is imagined and debt is infinite. And yet, people still believe, because belief itself has become the new gold. The system stands, chi siste for now, cast on the faith of billions. History whispers that every system, no matter how mighty, returns to its origin. And someday, the world will once again seek the weight of something real. The dollar's hidden warning isn't about gold, it's about trust. When trust breaks, no empire, no currency, no nation can stand for long. So as we look ahead, remember this: civilizations don't collapse overnight. They erode quietly, transaction by transaction, lie by lie. And maybe, just maybe, gold was never the real story. The real treasure was trust. And once lost, no vault can buy it back. 7 centuries of gold collapsed in 110. The world moved on, but history hasn't forgotten, and neither should we.